So, um, some of you may have noticed my um, absence from social media, and some of you have probably noticed that all but one of my videos prior to this one have been taken down from YouTube. That was a strategic decision on my part. There are lots of reasons I could go into why I made that decision. I'm not going to do that right now, but the only reason that I'm making this video is because so many of the people who have supported me for the last, well, since really March, April, in that time frame, have been sending me emails, text messages, private messages, and whatnot, asking me what's going on. And so I wanted to let you guys know I'm okay. It's the situation I'm in is not fun. It's a fight. I'm in a fight. All right. Let's just make that clear. I am in a fight. But something happened to me today that made me decide I needed to put up this video. I was on my way to worship, and I was listening to interview with the guys from the Sword and the Trowel, Jared Longshore and Tom Askell. They were interviewing the wife of Tom Coates, the Canadian pastor who has been arrested and imprisoned without being convicted for holding regular worship services. Now, things in Canada are they're different than they are here in the United States. Okay, so let's make that clear. The United States is a constitutional republic. Canada is not. Canada does not have the First Amendment like we have. They have some things in place and through a charter system that we consider to be normative for us here in the States. But Canada is not a constitutional republic. But I really needed to make this video because I came under some pretty strong conviction listening to her talk about her husband and his willingness to lose everything to stand up for what he believes in. And make no mistake, what Tom Coates is experiencing in Canada is not just persecution for the sake of the gospel. It's political persecution, all right? Tom Coates is being persecuted politically. Tom Coates has spoke out against government overreach and government abuse. And that's why they came for him, all right? So as I'm listening to this interview with the wife of Tom Coates and her conversation with Jared Longshore and Tom Askell, I'm hearing them talk about Romans 13 in a way that I wish every Christian pastor would do today, in the way that I wish every Christian would do today. But here's the deal, ladies and gentlemen. In the United States, in the Western Church, we have forgotten, and some of you have heard me talk about this ad nauseum, and I am going to continue to talk about this ad nauseum. All right. But I came under a conviction listening to that going, if he can do that, then what should I be doing? And so here's what I want to say in this video. Some of you have seen the video that Kurt from Emissary Life did of me from a couple weeks ago. Kurt did an amazing job. He took an impossible subject, me, and made me look as good as you could possibly do with video and videography and whatnot. But here's what I need to say. I am a horrible person, okay? I am a wicked, rotten sinner. That you cannot name one person that you know in your life personally that is a worse sinner than T.C. Pearson, bar none. You know, Paul is quoted as saying in the scriptures, "I am the chief of sinners." No, Paul, that's me. I screw up constantly. I sin all the time. But I take my sin seriously. I take my obligations seriously. And one of those obligations is, as an American citizen, I have to submit to the ruling authority. I have to. Well, how do I know who the ruling authority is? As a Christian, well, actually, as any person in the United States, the ruling authority of the United States, the highest earthly authority in the United States, is the Constitution. But Christians in particular, even those who aren't taking the same view of Romans 13 that I take, Christians in particular have an obligation to submit to the ruling authorities as they're appointed by God. So I'm going to share Romans 13 here with you, and it's vitally important that you hear this, all right? And you understand this. Every person is to be in subjection to the governing authority, for there is no authority except from God, and those which exist are established by God. Therefore, whoever resists authority has opposed the ordinance of God, and they who have opposed will receive condemnation upon themselves. For rulers are not a cause of fear for good behavior, but for evil. Do you want to have no fear of authority? Do what is good, and you will have praise from the same, for it is a minister of God to you for good. But if you do what is evil, be afraid, for it does not bear the sword for nothing, for it is a minister of God, an avenger who brings wrath on the one who practices evil. Therefore, it is necessary to be in subjection, not only because of wrath, but also for conscience sake. For because of this, you also pay taxes, for rulers are servants of God, devoting themselves to this very thing, rendered to all what is due them. Tax to whom tax is due, custom to whom custom is due, and fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. Now, why is this so important? Why is this so incredibly important, especially for Christians today, but for the whole world? Because there is no ruling authority in the United States that is not appointed by God. None. None. And I don't care if you're an atheist. I don't care what level of government authority you have that authority because God has appointed it to you. Now, God has also appointed an authority over all of those authorities here in the United States, and that authority is first, the Constitution. And second, it's we the people. Do you understand that? I don't care which level of office you hold. I don't care if you're an elected servant or if you're an appointed servant. I don't care if you're a hired servant. If you hold an office, if you work within the ruling structure of the United States, it is not you that is the ruler, it is the Constitution. And then we, the people, you work to serve the people. That is appointed by God. God has ordained the Constitution of the United States to be the highest, chiefest, most powerful earthly authority in the country, in the nation, in the republic. And you work, you serve, you are elected at the leisure of the people and according to the power of the Constitution. You aren't the power. That goes for the president of the United States. I don't care if it's Donald Trump. I don't care if it's Bill Clinton. I don't care if it's Joe Biden. You aren't the ruler. Every single person from the president down. And by down, I don't mean in a position of power. I just mean as we look at the tiered system in the United States. Every single person who is first elected is appointed by God through the process that God has appointed to the United States, which is you're elected by the people. You work for the people. You serve the people. You don't rule over them. You serve them. The people are your ruler. Then, every single position within the government, every single position from mayors to judges to county boards to city councils to sheriffs to police chiefs to county attorneys and city attorneys to the dog catcher to the person who works the front desk in your small town city hall. Every single one of you is a servant of the people. And if you're elected, you swear an oath to the Constitution. And that oath to the Constitution says that you will protect and defend the Constitution and the Republic of the United States. So why is this so important to me? As a sinner, the worst of any sinner you will ever meet, as a sinner, I need the grace and mercy of God. Without the grace and mercy of God, I'll know no forgiveness for the sins that I have committed. But it's also important to me because I judge what is good, not based on what man tells me, not based on what other people in society tell me. I judge what is good because I look to the objective standard for truth. I look to the objective standard for goodness and righteousness, and that is the God of the gospel, the God of creation. So then anything that government does, anything that government does is only good, not because the government is doing it, but because it meets the standard of what is good according to God. And so when a government entity of any type steps in, I don't care if it's Joe Biden or President Trump or Governor Tim Walz or Keith Ellison or the Minnesota Department of Health or the Canadian government. Consider the Ontario health system, the one that passed regulations, or not passed, excuse me, just ordered edicts that now have landed a pastor in jail for doing nothing more than pastoring his flock according to the way God has commanded. When they do anything that violates the goodness of God and God's standards, they are no longer doing good. How does God define good for the people of the United States, for the constitutional republic that we call America? God has laid out good practices for the government, not for the people, but for the government. He's laid out that definition, that dictate for what is good, and that is the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And in the very First Amendment of the Constitution, we read that government cannot infringe in any way, shape, or form on the freedom of speech, the practice of religion, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble in any way, shape, or form for the redress of grievances or to protest against a government that they believe is in error. And that assembly doesn't matter if it's one person or 200,000 people or 3.5 million people or 350 million people. The government can make no laws against those things. The government cannot penalize The government cannot punish. The government cannot persecute or prosecute a person for exercising their constitutionally enshrined liberties. No matter how unpopular those positions might be, no government entity can interfere with those or infringe upon those or penalize anybody for partaking in them. When a government does that, they are no longer doing good. They're doing evil. When government works to strip away from the American people their God-ordained liberties as enshrined and ensconced in the Constitution of the United States and exemplified in the Bill of Rights, they are working as agents of evil. Now, for Christians, for everybody, the proper response to that is to speak out against it because it's enshrined in the First Amendment. We speak out against that. We don't call for needless violence. We don't call for violence. We should never be the initiators of violence, ever. But we have to remember that the American people are in charge. That's guaranteed to them by the Constitution. So it doesn't matter who you are in society. It doesn't matter what position you hold. It doesn't matter where you work or what you do. If you want to call a public official to account for their negative behavior, not only do you have that liberty, but you have that obligation. But here in Minnesota, honestly, throughout the United States, we've forgotten that. We think our job is to just blindly follow every little edict and every little thing that comes our way and do it because that's the right thing, and that's not the right thing. Consider those states which have mandated facial coverings everywhere that you go. And say in the case of Minnesota, they tried to make it a law and the legislature couldn't even get it passed. In a house that's predominantly leftist, they couldn't get it passed. So are the people obligated to follow something that's a law or not a law? If the legislature can't even agree to make it a law, are we obligated to follow it? And is every law constitutional? Is every law part and parcel okay because the legislature and the Senate passed it and the governor or the president or whoever has signed off on it? Does that law automatically become constitutional? Now, in some jurisdictions, in the state of Minnesota in particular, the courts are going to rule initially that every law must be constitutional if it's passed, but they'll review it. There's a case referred to as Marbury versus Madison. It originated in 1801. As part of the political and ideological rivalry between outgoing President John Adams and incoming President Thomas Jefferson. Adams had lost the U.S. presidential election in 1800 to Jefferson, and in March 1801, just 2 days before his term as president ended, Adams appointed several dozen Federalist Party supporters to new circuit judge and justice positions in the attempt to frustrate Jefferson and his supporters. The Senate affirmed those appointments, and it ends up leading to a major lawsuit. One of these men, whose commission had not been delivered in time, he was therefore rejected, was William Marbury, a Maryland businessman. He had been a strong supporter of Adams and a Federalist. In 1801, after Madison repeatedly refused to deliver his commission, Marbury filed a lawsuit in the Supreme Court asking the court to issue a writ of mandamus, forcing Madison to deliver his commission. And this case goes on and on and on. And the Supreme Court, in Marbury versus Madison, the Supreme Court, in deciding this case, said any law repugnant to the Constitution is no law and has no force of law and can be ignored. That's a Supreme Court Justice John J. Marshall in 1803. That's laws. Those are laws that the Supreme Court was talking about. That says nothing about any other order or edict that comes down. That's just even laws that are repugnant to the Constitution are no law. They're unconstitutional. See, that's why I fight the way I fight. I don't fight just to be obstinate. I don't fight to have my dander up all the time and to show how tough I am. I'm not. I'm a coward. I'm ultimately just a coward. But see, the whole point of government isn't to order everybody around. It isn't to dictate to everybody how they're supposed to live their day-to-day lives. The point of government is to defend what is good, defeat what is evil, and bring justice to evildoers. So, if you're not an evildoer, you should not be in fear of the government. But what do we see today? Good, hardworking American citizens, private citizens in the United States are losing everything. Their jobs are being threatened. Their income is being threatened. Their well-being is being threatened by things that are repugnant to the Constitution, by people who are repugnant to the Constitution, by the very people who should be working to defend the Constitution, by the very people who should be doing everything in their power to ensure that everything that they do lines up, not with what the prevailing cultural winds say they should do, but what does the Constitution determine that they should do? But they're not doing that. Government servants, in other words, servants who are in government, elected servants of we the people of the United States, are siding with prevailing cultural winds in the order to remain popular, in order to not lose their jobs. Instead of doing what is right according to the Constitution, instead of defending what is good, they are instead silencing those who would do good, silencing those who speak good things, who tell the truth. They get fired from jobs. I can't count on two hands. Let me take that back. I don't have enough fingers and toes to count the number of people who have poured out to me over the last several weeks that their jobs have either been lost or put in jeopardy because they've spoken out in defense of the Constitution and against those things which are repugnant to the Constitution. I have friends who are losing their businesses, and their only crime is trying to adhere to the Constitution, while the very people who should be defending their rights to keep their businesses open, should be defending their rights to speak their minds, are bringing the full force of governmental power against them to silence them. That's evil. If you are one of those people out there who think you should be able to silence somebody just because you don't like the way they say something. If you think that someone comes to you and they speak truth to you, not their truth, but truth to you, and you don't like that truth, and your response is to try and silence them, you've forgotten your oath. See, the job of every oath-taking government servant is not to protect the public from things they don't want to hear. It's to protect people who speak even unpopular things, but especially who speak truth. Your job is to protect them. Protect them, not silence them. Do you understand what you're doing to this country? Do you understand? Do you not see what you're made of this nation when you knuckle under to societal pressure and you silence one, but you don't silence the other because the one that you're silencing So many of my friends out there who have lost their voices because they aren't saying things that people want to hear. So you're caving to pressure, oftentimes from criminals and miscreants, and from other people who have forgotten their oaths. I'm begging you. If you are a constitutional office holder and you want to bring pressure on people who disagree with you to silence them, please, I'm begging you to stop. You're setting yourself up against the Constitution. And I mean that. I'm not for my sake, but for your sake. If you are doing evil and calling it good, woe to you. Woe to you. Every single person who's elected to any position in the United States takes an oath to defend the Constitution and the United States from enemies both foreign and domestic. Every single person who works in a position of authority in the United States swears that oath. And it is the person who stands up and affirms that oath and sticks to that oath that is doing good, even if it's unpopular. So yeah, this is really important to me because I'm watching friends be harassed. I'm watching friends lose their jobs. I'm watching friends lose their income. I'm watching friends lose their voices because we're allowing culture to silence them when the government officials should be defending their very rights to say everything that they're saying, short of calling for violence. And especially those people that are standing for the Constitution and standing for what the Constitution means. See, these things are important to me. For those of you who are out there attacking my position because you don't like what I'm saying, these things are important to me, not just because I want to be a thorn in your side. These things are important to me because my God ordained the Constitution of the United States. My religious beliefs are intertwined, enmeshed in everything that I say. And while I fail to represent that well at times, these things are important to me because a very long time ago, when I joined the United States Army, I took an oath, and that oath to this day means something to me. So for those of you that are applauding my absence, shame on you. And for those of you that would work to silence me more, shame on you. And for those of you that want to continue to come for me and others like me, shame on you. I am not gone. I will not be forgotten, and I will not be silenced. And no other American should be either, no matter how unpopular what they say might be. Over the last several weeks, I have been fighting a battle internally about how do I proceed? What do I do? What is this channel going to look like? And I have a lot of things to work out, but I have one thing that I need to share. And this is a little long, but I want you to hear this. The language is antiquated, but sometimes antiquated language makes something even more powerful. So please, if you would, listen, and then I'll be done. Where do liberties end? Who can infringe upon them? Are such only protected from the state stifling? Or is the obligatory duty of the state and her representatives in her employ to not merely refrain from infringing upon the liberties, but also protect your person in exercise of those liberties from any who would infringe upon them? The learned will assert that every law that is consistently constitutional is built upon an obligation by the government to defend constitutionally ensconced liberties. The premise of any law against murder in the United States Republic is recognition of the promoting of the general welfare found in the preamble of the Constitution. The preamble is built upon the recognition of nature's God ordaining the rights of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness contained in the very bedrock of the Declaration of American Independence. When a private individual, organization, or entity seek to stifle the free speech and right to peaceably assemble contained in the First Amendment, the role of government is not to refrain from intervening, but instead to intervene to protect even the oratory or scribing which is unpopular or repugnant to the facetious mob or rabble. Consider a man preaching his creed in the public square. Consider the mob which assembles to challenge or even silence him there. Perhaps the sullied mob in anger at the religious crier call upon the local constabulary to move the man along, claiming he has in some manner offended or embarrassed their good sensibilities. What then is the role of the constabulary as the physical embodiment of the state? In that very moment, even if the constabulary disagrees with the verbose and obstinate man, as actors on behalf of we the people, they find themselves obligated to protect the speaker from harm and silencing. Alas, if the constabulary sides with the mob and determines to run the man from town or even apprehend him for the disturbance of or the apparent tranquility of the city proper, the constabulary has erred. The stated obligation of the state at all her levels is to err not. Such are best suited to defend not the properness of the message or the messenger, but the very proclamation of that message which provokes the ire and woeful banality of the hearer. If the stated mob rises up and seeks to lay hold upon the speaker, the state must then intervene, not merely to bring to conclusion the apparent erupting conflagration, but to interpose itself upon the violent mob in the safety of the speaker. If the state seeks to silence the speaker to prevent the mob-induced outrage, the state through her constabulary have now entered into a moment tantamount to treason. Nay, the state, at all her levels, must protect all liberty at even great cost to herself. There is no level of shame or embarrassment upon which the citizen must choose to fall upon his sword to spare the reputation of individuals, organizations, or entities, no matter the nature of their affiliation and their relationship therein. And may the heavens forbid that a detailed truth, no matter how it discomfits those that hear or read it, be silenced for the sake of sparing the self-same reputation. The state at all her levels is more sullied by the abuse of liberties than she ever shall be by the exposure that comes from the light of truth, no matter how discomfiting. It's not just the job of the state to not interfere in people's speech. It is the job of the state, the government, elected servants, to defend the right of freedom of speech, no matter how much they may hate it. No matter what the relationship of the state, of the government is to the person who's speaking. Your job is to defend the right of the freedom of speech and all of the other constitutionally enshrined rights and liberties at all costs, no matter how costly it might be to you. That's your job. That's your responsibility. Everything else is secondary. Everything. And so for those of you who are applauding and clapping and saying, oh, we got rid of TC, we got rid of the Minnesota Black Robe Regiment. 1, you didn't. 2, you won't. 3, I might re-gauge some, but I am not going away. I'm not going away. And this is my rally cry. Every single person out there who hears this and agrees, start your own YouTube channel. Start your own Rumble. Be civil. Be courteous. Sometimes be pointed, direct, and maybe insulting. Speak out. Make the people who are elected to serve you, elected servants, make them do their jobs. Hold them accountable for their actions. I don't care which level they're at. I don't care how uncomfortable they get. Make them do the right thing. Make them stop cowering in the corner. Stop hiding in the shadows, thinking it's all going to pass, because the more we cave in, the more we give in to their arguments, the more we let them push us around, the more they win, and the more they win, the more power they keep, and the more power they keep, the less we have, and the less we have, the more slavery we will experience in our lives. Thomas Jefferson so greatly said, I prefer dangerous freedom over peaceful slavery. All of this is because of the God I serve. So if you seek to silence me, you're silencing me from my religious perspective. And anyone else that you seek to silence, you're doing evil. I love every single one of you that supports me. And every single one of you that has reached out and asked what's going on. I love every single one of you. And even those who want to silence me, I love you. And I pray that the gospel will penetrate your hard, darkened hearts. And then you'll serve the God of nature who ordained this nation. That is a place the Constitution as our highest earthly authority. And that you will remember that that is the oath that you took, and that you serve the Constitution and we the people, and it is not the people that serve you. Until next time, pray for me, and sic semper tyrannis.